Spoilerin time, my friends. Welcome back. This is the companion show to Cordkillers. On Cordkillers, we figure out how to watch things, then we watch them, and we come to Spoilerin time to talk about that. This week, we will talk about Picard, Season 3, Episode 6, The Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 4, Ted Lasso, Season 3, Episode 2, Succession, the first episode of Season 4, and decide which of these shows we will no longer cover on Spoilerin time going forward. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Oh my gosh, it's a battle royale, beautiful people. One must fall. Will we give up on Succession after its first episode?
After one episode?
Will we decide after 3 seasons of Ted Lasso that we're donezo? Or, spoiler alert, it'll either be Mandalorian or Picard.
Yeah. Let's start by talking about Succession, Season 4, Episode 1. I don't know about you, Brian, but it's like no time has passed. I was back in the Succession family. I needed the recap to kind of remind me that Tom had betrayed Shiv, which is very important because their marriage is falling apart and all that. But otherwise, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's like I haven't missed a beat.
I actually want to, if we have an award to give for best precisely edited recap to exactly make me not remember all the abandoned plot lines that came before it and yet perfectly situate me to come into the show. To be honest, like, my wife has not watched any of Succession, and she was like, oh, well, I guess I have to start at the beginning. And I was like, no, I think you can. I can't imagine anything you would get out of the first 3 seasons of Succession that you can't instantly figure out in the first 5 minutes of this episode.
The only question would be, are you going to watch this season and then have cheated yourself out of enjoying the first 3? Or will it be like, I want to know how they got here?
To be honest, if that is what you want out of going back into the past, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get like a sensible route. You're going to get a bunch of spinning around on a map and then landing here. But the important part is we're here. Shiv and Tom are estranged. Logan is upset with his estranged kids who are pouting and having a number. That's the brilliance of this episode. So if I can very quickly summarize what I loved about this, Tom, is this could be the first Succession you've ever seen, and you get everything you need to know. You get the archetypes of the 3 kids. You get the fact that Logan's a pouty guy. You get the fact that Tom is a sniveling sycophant. You get the fact that Greg is a constant beta male who tries to stand up for himself, and it doesn't go well. You get this, and even the bidding, it all boils down to, they're talking billions. We know the stakes are large, but they don't get into the weeds on the numbers. They can't even be bothered to say the whole word billions. They just say, I don't know, 6 bill, 7 bill. Oh my God, 9 bill. Oh, it's a very small bidding war, which that in alone I was appreciating. And then big world ends and we go back to small world of Shiv and Tom. And this was my favorite. I don't know if it, I don't know that it's a whole third act, but it was a fine coda. They come back to talk about their failing marriage, and they still engage in that negotiation speak, that half like, well, do you want me to leave? And it's like, well, I'm very tired. Oh, but, I don't mind if you lay there. It's like nobody's willing to just speak the truth plainly because that's a sign of weakness. And Greg is the only one who is willing to speak the truth plainly. And as a result, everybody just slaps him around constantly. This show is great, Tom.
The other 2 things that I'll add to that is Greg is also the embodiment of the Peter principle. The person who fails up. Everything that is done to Greg raises him. Remember, he was like an intern in season 1, like a nobody, and he's now invited to Logan's, personal birthday party, which his +1 is questioned, but he's not. They never question whether he should be there. And earlier, he would have been questioned why he was there. And he's able to confidently state, I'm family, I get a +1, which he would not have been confident to state. But instead, we have other like beta male stuff like you were talking about. And I'm fairly positive at this point, Brian, that Tom's little joke where he's like, well, you have to tell him, he was not true, and that it has only helped Greg.
Yes.
In fact, Greg may be the only person Logan trusts
Yes.
At this point, because he knows that he has no artifice, or he wouldn't have bothered falling for Tom's prank. And yet Logan's like, hey, good for you. That's the little smirk when he's like, you're disgusting. And it's like, yeah, but maybe I understand you.
Well, and the best part about
that very
Greg,
much that Greg may be the winner of at the end of all of this.
Well, and that's my favorite part, is that clearly Greg doesn't know it. He still thinks like all he heard was Logan said a mean thing about my fingers. It's Bryce, what did you think of this one?
I thought it was great. It was good to get back into it, but also with a little bit of a time skip, right? Like the kids have already got their own. It was fun seeing the kids get all excited for their new Axios thing or whatever they wanted to build, and then just immediately drop it just so they could be petty with their dad for the entire season. I thought that was good. The bidding war was fun between the kids and Logan really wanting the paper, and then Nan being
so two-faced, where she's just like, it's just so gross, where people say numbers and then
thank you for that. We have to talk about. We'll talk.
What if we did say a number? 8, 9.
Like she literally says, like, I hate it when people say numbers, like 8 or 9
or whatever comes out. Yeah, it was so good.
Well, and then Logan points out by saying anchor 6. Like that's what she's doing, is she was trying to anchor an 8 or 9 number. It was amazing.
I do think I think you were saying this, Brian, but the stakes on that are very weird on that negotiation bit, because it's a lot of money that they're all just throwing around.
And the closest they could come to explaining to the audience, do you realize how many jet skis that is? Like
that was going to be my second point, is that we got the clear sense that Roman, while being wildly irresponsible as a person, is the only one who feels close to responsible as a business person, where he's like, but wait a minute, this is a really good idea. Do we really want to abandon it? And also, I mean, I know 100 million is not that much money, relatively speaking, but it's also still a lot of money. We could do a lot, in the number of jet skis you could buy with it, right? But he's the only one even voicing it. The rest of them are like, no, this is a fantasy baseball game. Like the numbers don't matter. We just need to beat dad.
Well, I don't know if that's conflating some of the Connor stuff, because Connor was talking about the price of his presidency. Campaign.
Right. There is a
was
little
he
bit
the jet ski one?
Yes,
Roman was the one mentioning 100 million too at one point.
Yeah,
he was definitely the last one to give up on the 100.
I think it was Roman that was saying that
when they were going
a million
to
is 1,000 thousands, and this is
yes.
This is 1,000.
You're right. I forgot that Connor did the 100 million.
This
thing.
is think of
and then that was 500 million.
Yeah, exactly. Where Connor's story has been really interesting this entire series, because it seems to exist outside of everything, and I think we need that to get a break from the constant chess game that they're playing. But I don't know. It just feels like he's doing his own show completely on the side the entire way through this.
I feel like it's going to circle back. I think it's a path that's off along the side, but it's going to connect back up, because you do see Logan pick up the phone and criticize the evening news. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of little hints here and there about getting press and getting helped. And I think something's going to happen with Connor that's going to boost his 1% to 2%. That
might have been one of my favorite moments. Is there's in one podcast or another, somebody was describing an acting workshop that they took to get cast in certain roles, and a brutal exercise they did is they made everybody gossip and figure out what this person is without knowing anything about them. So like we all figure ourselves to be, the hero of our own story, but then it's like, but if you saw them in an airport, what would you project onto them? And to go through it was brutal, to find out that you're the Hausfrau, or that you're the, you know, the guy still living in his mom's basement or whatever. But everybody on the other side was saying, oh, what a gift in Hollywood that I could get cast for that stuff. And there's that moment when I forget what it was that Logan Roy says, but he's clearly upset about the guy on the news. And he said, he's like a something with like a jar with a toupee on top. And then it cut to the guy. And I was like, perfect casting. Like, that was a great moment.
Yeah. No, this was strong. And I think only Succession could pull off a very mundane numbers-based business negotiation as dramatic tension. They really sucked me in, and all they were doing was going from 6 to 10.
Well, and on top of that, there was a brief moment where in any other show, I would have been really annoyed by it, but it was handled with enough meta responsibility that I dug it. Who's the oldest one? Whatever the oldest one is.
Connor.
Second oldest.
Kendall.
Kendall. Kendall says, I'm the blank, she's the blank, you're the whatever. And it's like, well, that was definitely written to catch everybody up. but I didn't mind it at all because that's something the character Kendall would say.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I don't know if I have that much more to say about this other than it's nice to be back.
Oh, you got something?
I got a red line.
Okay.
I watched the coming up on the season thing.
Oh no, I didn't.
I don't love a sign that a show is getting too long in the tooth for me is when they do the election season. They are definitely seeming like they are getting ready to do a big election.
Oh man.
Thread.
Okay. No. Oh, doggone it.
I know.
I kind of wish you hadn't
that's where
told
Connor's
me that.
story is going to connect back in.
Well, so right now,
So I don't know how
it's the
maybe
final
he's-
season.
he's hanging on tooth and nail for 1%, and he'll become kingmaker. And
Right.
yeah,
I would like to believe that when they do that, right, where his 1% is important, is so obvious of a story that they do this next week. And we can just get it out of the way. Like Succession is usually pretty good about doing that.
I don't think they're going to, but I also don't think they're going to take up a lot of air with the election story. I think that's going to be a piece of the fight that they're going to be using them. It's just going to be another weapon that the kids and Logan are going to pick up and wield at each other. And Connor's going to be caught up in that.
you know what? I noticed a similarity, and this will be our segue to go to our next topic. But I noticed that Succession, much like our next show, the real action happens off camera, and we're just seeing, like, we don't see the billions in action. We just see the adult children arguing about their billions, similar to...
And that is Succession, season 4, episode 1. We don't do transitions that way because
I'm
of the
perfectly
way
happy leaving everybody annoyed.
because of the way Bryce chops him up. Let's talk about Ted Lasso, season 3, episode 2, which, as Brian may or may not have pointed out in our Succession discussion, carries a little similarity in the action being off the pitch, as you might say here.
Yeah, dude, this was the episode that I truly, I realized I cannot wait to go to the Austin Football Club. I cannot wait to see. I was really I want more football. I want more soccer in my Ted Lasso.
You wanted more sports.
Now I understand how Bryce became heroin-like addicted to F1. Is the stories just got too good? He had to get the raw horse.
Give it to me raw.
So one thing that I thought of that makes me think of is that you were saying, like, well, what's the story going to be this year? Like, they can't win it all, can they? No, the story is, will they get relegated? They win the season by not getting relegated. They don't have to win the championship.
That stinks.
Why? Why does that stink? Because they've done this every season.
Because there's a phrase that we
lost.
Because Tom, we tell children to shoot for the moon, and if you fail, you'll land upon the stars.
Or as one famous football coach put it, believe.
Believe, and then you slap it. And then you
I believe. I would love to. And Tom, you're not wrong. This will be a fine season if they subvert expectations.
And they will make you believe that is winning. That has been the magic of Ted Lasso, is they don't have to win the championship to win the story. So when I tell you that, I'm telling you that not the way the people who run the show would tell you, which is how they're going to tell you over the next 9 episodes or 8 episodes. I'm telling you as it very bluntly in a way that doesn't psychologically set you up to enjoy the story. But you will, by the end of this, be cheering madly when they don't get relegated. I feel like they're able to tell that kind of story and make you believe.
That'll be interesting because season 2, outside of its wonderful heel turn at the end, was a bit of a slog. And I'm ready for success and advancement. And they have done a fair
They
job.
lost in season 1 and you loved it.
Well, yes, but that was the story of Ted Lasso successfully establishing himself and winning the trust of the team. Season 2 was a slog until it was the story of Nathan successfully embracing his status as a Sith apprentice. Season 3, I would like very much to see Richmond do well, and it's fine if they don't, but they have already in the first 2 episodes established a number of other status games that are happening. Keeley, for reasons that aren't entirely explained and don't need to be, I guess is in charge of her own company, but she doesn't understand any of the people that work for her.
The investors placed the CFO. They said this briefly.
Yes.
So you easily could have missed it, but it's a common thing when you have venture capital backers to say like, yeah, we'll sink this many millions into your business, but we get a voice in the CFO to manage the finances since it's our millions, and so that's pretty common.
This is one of those things that I suspect if I was binging this show would not have been a factor at all, but it was so briefly mentioned in episode 1 that a week later I was like, Bonnie asked me, so what's she doing? I was like, I think she's in charge of a company, but I don't entirely know why. But we see essentially Keeley playing from Ted Lasso's playbook. She has to win over everybody on her team. And I kind of like seeing that good stories are good stories, right? And we have, for reasons not explained, the unfurling story of Roy Kent and Keeley and why they can't be together, according to Roy Kent. And also at the end of this episode, episode 2, we have a fairly shocking before I get to that, Trent Krim as an embedded person writing a book, chef's kiss. Love it. Trent Krim got won over by the end of season 1, was around season 2. The idea of him being somebody who is clearly a believer, and he's so Trent Krim might be my favorite character on the show next to Roy Kent right now. And their
we'll see.
friction,
yeah, it's pretty close.
I think, is great. I am deeper in love with this series than I've been in a very long time. I thought this was a fantastic episode. I thought I got a little bit teary-eyed at the fact that because I guess Chelsea was Roy Kent's starting team, right? And that's also
it was the team he played the best for,
right. And it's where he played his last game, I believe, and blew out his knee, and now he's there as a coach. That moment he's sitting there, and everybody starts doing their Roy Kent chant, and the sincerity, like this is the magic of Ted Lasso, is that he's able to elicit the level of sincerity that we get from Roy Kent, where he talks about it being sad. My last other note is, what a great vaudeville style Who's on First bit that was about everybody being shocked about everything else in the locker room. It was a great
brilliant.
nested tree of, it was good.
Yeah, it was very Abbott and Costello. And then, I guess the only thing we haven't talked about is the troublemaker who brings championships, and how he's going to Chelsea until Rupert woos him over to West Ham. But then Rebecca gets in his head by barging into the men's restroom, and while he's peeing, tells him, yeah, you'll go to West Ham because that's the easy choice. Because people won't know that you're not good anymore because they'll win anyway. And it'll look like you helped them win. And she is the only person who's ever like gotten through his veneer, we are led to believe, because instead of changing his mind and choosing West Ham, he changes his mind and chooses Richmond instead.
Yeah, I'm here for all of that. Bryce, so you're watching all these, right?
Yeah. This is good.
I mean, that's the thing is If I'm going to question anything, it's like I enjoyed it so much. At some point, I wondered, is this all candy? Am I just eating fan service candy? And I don't know.
I do wonder about that. Like how I hopefully and presumably there is more character development in these however many episodes are left. I don't know. I want to continue to be surprised in the way that Ted Lasso surprises me, and so I can't really have expectations for that. But I'm
you
liking
not
it.
been surprised yet this season?
I think I have. I think I've been led on a good path so far. These 2 episodes.
Were you
I thought the
surprised?
Rebecca bit was not surprising, but it got me cheering. And it was a thing I wouldn't have expected at the beginning of the episode. I started to see it coming when she barged into the restroom. And I was like, well, this is definitely going to work. But I feel like they're still pulling some good Ted Lasso magic, which is harder to do in the 3rd season when you've gotten used to the tricks.
Speaking of tricks, like the best thing to do is place all the ingredients in front of you, make you see it only at the end. It was a great moment that somebody kicked a ball into Danny Rojas's face, and his face scored a goal.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
I scored a goal with my face.
Yeah.
All right, that is Ted Lasso season 3, episode 2. Let's talk about The Mandalorian season 3, episode 4. We're no longer doing the what's the rocket? Werner von Braun.
Werner von Braun. Yeah.
We're not doing the von Braun story anymore. We're back to the Coven, the covert, and you see Bo-Katan get drawn in a little more into and even throw out of This Is the Way. You see them fight a dragon and save a kid, and you see Grogu do a duel and win.
Yeah. A couple of bits I thought were really, really good. That bit where Grogu's farting around on the beach, moving rocks with his mind. Only, whoops, they're not rocks; they're seashell creatures. That was a good surprise. The tedium of the orders and the rules and the things, and the fact that clearly the voices are not the actors wearing the costumes. Felt a little bit like a video game cutscene.
The voices are not the actors wearing their costumes?
That was one of the stories that we covered, is that Din Djarin is played by a bunch of stuntmen, and what's his name comes in and just records the voice now. I would imagine it's the same thing for Book.
That is not apparent to me while watching this.
Okay,
That's why.
Little things I noticed, like the head bobs not matching when the voice, like that would not be a natural way that you do things. But again, that's production brain kicking in, which I had time to do because the story was not so engaging that I got distracted with the story. Now, look, I just praised Succession for being a very simple story. I just praised Ted Lasso for being a very simple story. Simple does not mean bad in my book. You can do simple very, very well. However, this felt lazy simple, and the 20-minute segment that was straight up, like, in tone, in style, in substance, in everything, it reeked of the prequels. I was not a fan. Was anybody feeling tension for Grogu about whether or not he would escape successfully the massacre of the younglings at the Jedi Temple?
Another massacre?
Because I know he survives.
This is a flashback to the prequels.
Okay.
They literally yeah.
Of course I knew that he would escape, but I was curious, like, about his backstory. And so when they started showing this, I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to tell us how he escaped. Apparently how he escaped is a Jedi took him and put him in a plane.
Oh, doggone it. Somebody in the chat
away.
is pointing out that actor. So when that Jedi is revealed, very clearly they're like, but I didn't recognize who it was. And people in the chat
he didn't have big floppy ears.
Well, people are pointing out that that's Ahmed Best, the actor who played Jar Jar Binks. And for that, I do cheer. I do cheer for that
cool.
as fan service. But I wish they hadn't gone, And I'm like, yeah,
You know you're watching Star Wars, right?
well, but
But
Andor
also, I mean,
is Star
those
Wars.
things seem to bother you because you think about them. I didn't get bothered by that myself, and maybe it's because I don't think enough.
Well,
I don't know.
I
but,
felt
like
it was just it was a
where I was going, and maybe I was taking too long to tell this point, so I'll shorten it up. Is I didn't mind that they told us Grogu's backstory. It just wasn't a very interesting backstory. Like I'm like, great. Oh, tell us how he escaped. Like, well, he escaped the way you'd expect. Someone got him and put him in a ship. Like I wanted something cooler than that.
yeah. Well, and look, I'm not here to compare siblings or anything, but you know, your bigger brother Andor probably would have made that Ahmed Best character
I think Andor's
really
the younger brother.
interesting. And like maybe, yes, I know Grogu's going to survive somehow, but maybe I'm really worried about whether or not Ahmed Best is going to survive, and maybe he'd almost
Well,
survive
yeah,
and then doesn't.
And obviously, you know, Ahmed Best's character, Kelleran Beck, according to IMDb, doesn't survive because none of the Jedi are alive later on.
I mean,
So-
I don't know. You could have faked me out saying, "You go that way.
Exactly.
I'm gonna pretend to be a mercenary from now on and never admit I'm a Jedi." And I'll be all like, "Yeah, you're
Right.
gonna make it."
That would have been interesting.
But then
or he gets killed and Grogu, figures out how to survive on his own and get away.
He's a street
which
urchin
kind of
for
what
a
I was
little while.
expecting. Yeah,
That would be amazing.
That's
Okay,
that's
all
where
right,
I thought it was going.
You know what? Here's the moment. Here's the moment. You want one moment? It's everybody was given the direction in front of a green screen, shoot at each other, and all of the good guy police stand shooting like stand ramrod erect and just shoot straight forward without moving or dodging, whereas the clone warrior soldiers have the advantage of crouching. In other words, the most basic idea you would do for something you learned or finding cover is the dumbest thing ever. Tom, I had
If it had been a more interesting backstory, and probably if it hadn't been a prequel, because I know that bugs you too.
Oh no, it doesn't.
Then you wouldn't.
Andor is a prequel.
Then you wouldn't have cared. You wouldn't have cared about the straight shooting stuff because that happens in Star Wars all the time. But you were left to think about it because there was nothing else going on.
Yeah, I didn't care for this one, Tom.
It was fine for me. I didn't have as many issues with it. I feel like you get into a cascade where if the story isn't good, then it just gets worse.
Well, you know what?
like-
That's a legit criticism,
Yeah,
because what happens is if I'm not engaged with the story, then I'm like, well, what is here? And then I start seeing the cracks and all that stuff.
Yeah. No, and that's totally fair. And I could see that happening with this because I think you were supposed to get really tied up with the pursuit of the monster.
Oh,
And if you're
yeah.
into monster pursuit, I guess that was really fun, but it wasn't unique or different. And you kind of knew they were going to win, and they did.
So something that I think is really interesting was a fan theory that Merrill Barr hit me up with that he's very excited about, was the supposition, because we see in this season somebody roughly around the age of 13 undergo a ceremony to essentially become an adult, and they have to decide whether or not in their particular sect they're going to be the type of this adult who will always wear the special headpiece, or the other type of the same sect that is more liberal and sometimes wears it. Anyway, the supposition, the question is all of this a parallel for the various flavors of Judaism, which I thought was fairly interesting. I wouldn't be surprised. There were enough parallels that I was like, yeah, wouldn't surprise me if that came up in the writer's room. I don't know that they're trying to make a point about it one way or the other, but there's enough there.
It wouldn't be the first time that you've had religious parallels like that in there.
Exactly.
And it would be a good one to use. Yeah.
No, I thought that was interesting.
Any other thoughts on The Mandalorian?
Tom?
Yes,
we
Brian.
only have time to absolutely commit on Spoilerin time to talk about 3 shows. And we have 4 shows this week.
We broke the rule. We removed our helmet, if you will.
Yeah, but don't worry. No humans are watching. we have to choose one to lose. And that brings us to our next show.
Why,
So-
why are you doing that?
segues
We
again.
don't
Why do you
segue.
keep doing
No,
transitions,
I'm
Brian?
perfectly comfortable letting everybody be annoyed.
All right, Tom, it's fine. We'll go.
Okay. My question for you, Brian, was going to be: are we watching The Mandalorian next week?
I guess spoiler alert. I'd rather stick to Picard, which is crushing it. So I'll certainly watch Mandalorian, but we won't be talking about it.
So there you go, folks. If you're following The Mandalorian, I will keep watching it.
I
And
will
I think
too.
Brian probably will
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Okay.
It's relegated.
And so it is likely to come up in After Talk. So if you want to continue to hear our thoughts on The Mandalorian, listen to After Talk, but we are not committing to The Mandalorian any longer. This is the way. That's The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 4. Now let's talk about Picard, Season 3, Episode 6. Brian, why is this the one you want to keep watching and talking about on Spoilerin Time?
Because I don't know how they got here, but at some point, people figured out, you know what people really want? More Star Trek The Next Generation. Just go back to Star Trek The Next Generation. It's why Lower Decks is wonderful, because it's Star Trek The Next Generation with self-awareness in cartoon form. And that's why Picard Season 3 is incredible. I burst out laughing alone in the room at least 4 times during this episode, and it was with genuine joy and delight. I felt respected as a viewer and as somebody, like, there was a little bit of fan service stuff where they explained, well, that's the ship that did the thing from the other episode. But in general, it was all fairly justified. I unironically love Picard as of this episode. Unguardedly, unreservedly, in my heart, I sing proud.
I think Picard Season 3 may end up being the best Next Generation movie they've made.
Right? It's so
right?
good.
Yeah. This episode particularly was like, oh yeah, this feels like a TNG movie. You know, Geordi's not with them anymore. Worf is off, becoming a meditate. I'm starting to get suspicious if Worf is like a changeling Vulcan or something. But I think we'll get a different explanation for his meditative state by the end of this. But I'm very curious about like why he has meditated. But I'm glad they put a flag on it. I'm glad that they're like, yeah, what is up with him? Why is he being like this? That's interesting. Picard in this episode was back to being Picard, not the sort of thing that I was worried about in a couple early episodes where I'm like, why is he uncertain all the time? He was back to being an admiral, knowing what to do and being in charge. I even like his son's storyline now. It's like, oh, he's got rheumatic syndrome, just like you, just a little more advanced. I think there might be more to that as well. But I like that they gave us a scientific explanation for it for now. So I just thought this was a really fun episode. And like you say, a little bit of fan service when they did the tour had me wondering like, oh, are they going to steal one of the old ships and we're going to be on one of the old bridges? But no, they wisely just teased you with that, didn't actually do it. And when they were in the archive, or not the archive, it was the vault.
Yep. I did see the one fan servicey thing.
You got multiple. There was the Tribble, and of course the Klingon reacting to the Tribble. But Kirk's body is in there.
Oh, I missed that, but I did catch. Did you catch there like a whole bunch of stuff, and then it says like the camera cuts to it and the screen turns off, but not before you see Genesis 2.0 as the device.
Oh yes, Genesis 2. Yeah, that was good too. I had to pause and go back because they showed us a skeleton, and it said rank captain. And I was like, wait, whose body is in there? And I went back and it was James T. Kirk. His skeleton is in there. Why is that? And then we find out at the end of the episode that what they stole was Picard's body, like his actual human body, which makes me wonder, okay, why are they storing these dead captains' bodies in the dangerous element section of things?
That's interesting. I suppose it's because read into this
Well,
what
the thing
you will.
about Picard and Kirk is they both were in the Nexus.
I mean, depending on how you read it, you could say that a truly excellent captain is made of sterner stuff, and that their very bodily material is a type of biological weapon that needs to be under. So, in a world where things could be cloned and replicated, and
yeah, or changelings.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it could be just that. The fact that it's Picard and Kirk and they were both in the movie generations in the Nexus makes me think there might be some effect on their DNA or something that might explain it too.
Well, how did you like? I did not expect to buy into bringing data back. I feel like they fairly earned it. It's not truly our data. Our data is in there. And they even justify through the holographic data dump moment. I don't know how much I love his projection eyes hologram thing. I don't remember that being part of it. But
I think we saw him do that once before, maybe in a movie, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But I do love the idea that this is an on-purpose older body meant to encompass more multitudes. And we know it's got synth and android technology combined. It's not all quite there, but the way Brent Spiner represented it, it really did feel like that's our data inside. It's a crowded space, but then Lore comes forward and says, "How you doing?" And then B4 comes in, and also I didn't even mind the weird Moriarty bit, and I don't know, man. I felt everything in this episode was earned, and that's something I haven't seen in Picard very much up until this season.
I don't love the Holodeck Gone Wrong episodes. So Moriarty showing up had to do a lot of work. And the fact that it was Data kind of subconsciously helping them made it okay. I was like, oh yeah, okay, that tracks. That would be like a dream Data was having while he's in this sleep. I'm absolutely fine. In fact, I love the idea of like, oh, let's repeat multiple times. Data has died twice. This is not Data, but he did copy his memories into B4. And so Data is in the simulation along with Lore, along with B4, along with Soong. I'm on board for all of that. I'm like, what a great way to bring Data back without actually bringing Data back, without making it seem like, oh, he didn't really die after all. I loved all of that. I did slip a little when I'm like, but how are you going to explain his old body? And they're like, it represents wisdom. That's what I've discovered. I'm like, yeah, but you wouldn't have to make. You have to.
That's look, man. You gotta reset. Yeah. You gotta reset the clock somehow. I mean, it's like
how as far as like, well, they're using Brent Spiner, and they didn't want to pay to de-age him, so
that's what it is. It's like if they could, they would have just paid for de-aging, and that would have been the better version.
That was the one thing I'm like. It's a harder one to swallow, but it didn't bother me. It didn't ruin it for me or anything. I went past it pretty quick. I'm like, it's fairly clever. Sure. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, everything feels earned. The fact that they got framed and that the whole Federation's coming for them. And I'm loving, I might go back and rewatch this whole season. It's good. Tom, this is everything I dared hope Picard would be since day one.
This is what I was hoping for too, man. I'm right there with you. That is Picard season 3, episode 6. So again, next week, Succession 402, Ted Lasso season 3, episode 3, and Picard season 3, episode 7. If you want Mandalorian conversation, you might get it in After Talk. No major commitments there. Thank you for supporting us, though. You get After Talk by being a patron. You get these broken up. The reason that I was like, no, don't transition is because Bryce divides them up into individual chunks for you if you are a patron. So by all means, go and subscribe at patreon.com/Cordkillers, and we'll spoil you next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.